list of what I think are the top 10 chase cards of the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And there are so many good cards in this set, mostly in the high rarity, but there are a few uncommons that are worth looking at as well. But since there are so many, it was hard to pare down this list to just 10. So let's first look at some honorable mentions. We got Ensnaring Bridge. And so the reason I like this card is because it's great for stalling to hit objectives. It's great against if you're going creatureless, making sure that the creatures your opponent play don't hurt you with their attacks. And it seems like it tends to stay on the board for a pretty long time. It doesn't seem to be targeted very often, so it's pretty resilient in that way. And yeah, it's a really good card for coalition events where you have to hit certain objectives, or yeah, you're just trying to slow the game down so that you can accomplish what you need. So very much worth having in your collection, and definitely a chase worthy card. It's just not quite in my top 10 because you don't necessarily want to play this every battle, but it is very useful in certain decks. Got Molten Collapse. Destroy the opposing card with the greatest mana value. So this one is actually an exclusive right now. You can't really chase it unless you chase it with your money, but this card is pretty good. The main reason I like this card is because it gives red a chance for just straight up untargeted removal. Destroy the opposing card with the greatest mana value means that you're probably going to get rid of something that's pretty nasty. The only thing is, it's a little bit unpredictable sometimes what it'll hit. Sometimes there's a high cost support on the battlefield and you want to hit a creature instead, so you don't always get to hit what you want, but still, the fact that this is good untargeted removal for red, and red hasn't had that in a really long time, just a straight up kill spell like this makes it definitely worth chasing. Got Hit the Mother Load. I love this card. I use it in most of my red decks now. 14 mana, so basically you're getting a lot of mana back for the amount that you're casting this for, because you're basically getting to choose two of the next 8 cards in your library, and you're creating 4 gold tokens, so those will give you some mana back as well. So it's a great way to fetch for what you need. It's going to get you halfway to casting it, and it's also giving you 4 little tools to help you gain more of that mana that you need to cast those cards you just fetched. So, very good card. All right, now we're at number 10. We got Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh Vanguard. This is a great card. It basically helps you in whatever phase of the battle you're in. If you get this card on the board quickly, you start to drain 6 mana from the first 2 cards in your opponent's hand. It's going to really slow them down. I've noticed how much it really slows them. It's like hitting Kiora's first ability like every turn you're able to. So, and it gives you +3 on the shield. So you're building the shields on this Vanguard up pretty quickly. And then the second phase, or the second ability, is you exile the first opposing creature with cost 8 or greater, then gain X mana. X is that card's base mana cost. So it's giving you a lot of mana just for triggering it, and you're exiling for only -4. So you can trigger it the next time you're able to use a Vanguard ability after you put this on the board. So you're going to be able to use it pretty quickly. And then last but not least, for 10 shields, You can exile each opposing creature, so it's just a board wipe on their side. And on top of that, you get to deal 15 damage to your opponent's planeswalker. So, very strong card. Very useful in all phases. And it's tricolor, so you can fetch it with Meeting of the Five. So, that's also great. Number 9, we got Sunbird Standard. So, this to me is a really good card for an uncommon. 14 mana, 2 shields. I wish it had like one more shield, but can't be too picky about it. But at the beginning of your turn, convert 4 gems to your planeswalker's color. I don't really care about the crafting part of this. The Sunbird Effigy token is okay, but not nearly as good as just being able to convert 4 gems to your planeswalker's colors. It's a staple in every mono colored planeswalker I use. And I even use it in some of my dual color planeswalkers as well. But it's better than most of the lands in this game if you're just thinking about it as gem conversion. So that makes it a very useful card to me. Next, we got Aklazot's Deepest Betrayal. So there's been a lot of discussion, especially in the FTA Discord, about how viable this card is. I think that really the 4/4 body is its only real downside. The rest of this card does a lot for you. When this creature attacks, your opponent discards 2 cards, then draw a card. So that's already worth the price of admission right there. Because if you're making your opponent discard 2 cards every turn, they better quickly get rid of this card, or else they're not going to have really the tools to do so unless they use a Planeswalker loyalty ability. And if they're not exiling it once they destroy it, it turns into a land support that converts 3 gems to black. So that's great for mono-colored walkers, but really good for just about any walker because it's converting 3 gems to 1 color, which is always great. And then when your opponent discards a card, create 2 bat tokens. And those bat tokens actually stack up pretty quickly. They're only 1/1s, but if you're creating 2 of them per turn, and then anytime your opponent discards a card, you're creating 2 bat tokens as well. So anything like time reversal, anything like Jin Gataxius, the masterpiece that makes your opponent discard their whole hand, that's great. So you can actually create a decent amount of bat token stacks. You wouldn't think so, but there are a lot of ways to make your opponent discard. So very strong creature, and it's got lifelink as well. So there's a lot going for it. And if it was just a little bit bigger of a body, then I think people would just be using this card all over the place. I mean, I think they should be using it because it's a really good control card and it gives you a lot of different things to do with it. Number 7, we got Mana Crypt. At the beginning of your turn, convert 3 gems to your Planeswalker's color. Mana Field, the first card in your hand that gains full mana, then you lose 9 life. So this one was one that they spoiled for us early on, and you can get it in the collector box. So there are different ways of getting it. I do believe there's an alt art version of this card as well. So there's a lot of different ways to get this card. It's 9 mana, 4 shields with Mana Field. So yeah, it's really good. They fixed a few bugs they had with it, but the only thing that is still not working correctly is that the first card in your hand that can gain mana gains full mana. So if the first card in your hand is full mana, this won't trigger the mana field. So it should work like any of the Moxes where the next card in your hand that can gain mana, if the first card is full, should get the mana, but it doesn't yet. But, at least the life loss isn't triggering anymore. So, but I would still like to have them fix it to have everything working the way it does on the card. But with that said, converting 3 gems to your Planeswalker's color is also pretty good. So it's a nice little added benefit to a monocolored walker, especially. But also, if you're trying to trigger that mana field, sometimes that gem conversion will give you a potential gem match that will trigger the mana field as well. So there's a lot of great ways to make this give you what you want. Number 6, Sunken Citadel. When this support enters the board, convert 7 gems to the most present color on the board. At the beginning of your turn, increase all of your positive mana bonuses by 2 until the end of your turn. So for me, and it's 13 mana, but it has 4 shields. That's pretty good for a land. Most lands only have like 2 shields, maybe 3, but I'm glad this one has 4. So when this support enters the board, so this has a great enter the board effect where it's creating cascades, giving you lots of mana. So there's a lot of great reasons to use this card. If you're using it like with Nissa's Expedition, you get to choose this card, put it on the battlefield, and that's like almost another extra conversion spell that you're casting. Sometimes it doesn't give you the color you want. Like sometimes you'll just be using, I don't know, Nicol Bolas, and it'll convert 7 gems to white. So that will sometimes suck, but for the most part, it's a really useful effect. And then it keeps on giving by giving your positive mana bonuses a +2 to everything. So if you're using Karn, for example, that's going to be really doing a lot for you. If you're using Hall of Gemstone, that's going to be giving you an extra bump in mana bonus. Not that you really need it at that point, but still, it's nice. Because if you're using Hall of Gemstone, you're increasing all of your mana bonuses already, so it's going to give you an extra +2 to everything, no matter what. So, very useful card. Number 5, Chamil the Inner Sun. Cards in your hand can't have their mana drained or raised by effects your opponent control except for ward effects. At the end of your turn, discover 4, then discover 4. So this one was one that is an exclusive through battles from the ages, so it's not that hard of a card to secure for yourself. And then it's got 6 shields, which is really good actually. 17 mana. So the reason I like this card so much is that you get all of your cards casted, and then at the end of your turn, you get 2 new cards that you get to choose, and then they get half their mana into it. So it's setting you up for your next turn to be giving you good card advantage, and also that protection from cards being drained of mana actually is fairly useful, especially if you're going against a player that's using something like Nicol Bolas Vanguard. That keeps it from being able to up its shields too. So it's got a sneaky good defensive part to it, but for the most part, you're going to be using it for that Discover 4 twice. And speaking of, we got Hall of Gemstone, number 4, support card, enchantment, 15 mana, 4 shields, mana field, gain an extra swap, then increase your mana bonuses by 7 until the end of turn. So, what I love about this card is that it's giving green the chance to give you an extra swap. That's usually a blue thing, but because of it, you getting an extra swap, you get a chance to take advantage of that mana bonus increase. I feel like that's a very Octagon thing to do, is to not give you an extra swap. So that's a really smart move by Webcore. So kudos to them for good game design there, I think. The Trap 8, deal 10 damage to a random opposing creature. I don't actually get to trigger this one that much because I'm usually using this card in a heavy conversion deck. So most of the time, I'm destroying those traps before my opponent even gets to use them, or, use them, gets trapped by them. So that part of it is not really the part that is that useful to me, but the extra swap and increasing your mana bonuses by 7 means usually you're going to be able to cast most of your high mana cost creatures and spells, which we're going to get to next here. So it's a great enabler for you to get the rest of your cards out. I think maybe you've noticed that I place a high importance on cards that enable you to cast your other cards. Cards that put the cards you want into your hand, give them a lot of mana, or just make them free or easy to cast are the best cards in the game to me. So the cards that do that are the ones I'm going to be rating highly. So that's just a little bit of insight into my own philosophy when it comes to deck building. So there you go. That's my explanation for why I'm rating these cards so high. Number 3, we got Tent with Discovery. 25 mana, but converts 20 gems to green. When you cast the spell, discover 4. Then if you have 4 or less cards in your hand, discover 4. So pretty much the only downside to this card is the 25 mana cost. But if you're using things like Hall of Gemstone, Mox Emerald, anything else that will make that 25 mana cost either a non-factor or reduce the hindrance of casting this card is gonna be what makes it worth really using, because most of the time if you're casting this card, it's gonna enable you to cast a lot more cards with that green gem conversion. So, especially pairing it with Hall of Gemstone, the 20 gems to green are just going to convert the matches and cascades that are created by converting 20 gems to green is just going to, a lot of times, let you cast your entire hand just from this spell. So, not only that, but at the end of casting this conversion spell, you get to choose what's going to go next into your hand after to take the place of casting this one. So, what an amazing card. Green gem conversion, or just gem conversion in general, is back in a big way. It's one of my favorite things that Webcore has brought back into standard. So, they balance these things out a little bit by really upping the cost of them, but in my practice, it hasn't really been something that makes me not want to use a card like this. So, one of my favorite cards in Standard, and that's why it's top 3 for me. Number 2, we got Golden Wish. 21 mana. Fetch the first 2 artifact support or Vanguard cards from your library. Those cards gain full mana, then convert 20 gems to loyalty gems. So, the reason this card is so great is any one of those things make it worth using, but to combine these 2 effects into one card just makes this just a stellar card. Just I'm using in just about every deck that can take it, because all those other top 10 cards we went through, the artifact sports and Vanguard cards, well, that's gonna make them free. So after doing that, we're going to convert 20 gems to loyalty gems. So that's going to almost always fill up our loyalty bar. So that is amazing. There's so many planeswalkers where you really want to be able to spam their abilities, such as Quintorius. So that's a great reason to use this card. So personally, I think Quintorius very much shines with Golden Wish and is not nearly as good a planeswalker without having some sort of loyalty generator at your disposal. Definitely competes, maybe even surpasses Faithbound Judge for a loyalty converter, or just a way to get loyalty in the game. So, phenomenal card. And can you guess what's going to be my number one? You got it. Galta. Stampede Tyrant. 24 mana. 15/15 with trample. When this creature enters the battlefield, convert 15 gems to green. If you really want to know all the reasons why this is a great card, you feel free to go watch Nalthazar's preview on this card when it was spoiled for us before official launch. But my 2 cents on it is, yeah, it's 24 mana to cast, but since it's a creature, there are a lot of ways to cheat it out. You got Blossoming Tortoise, makes a great pairing for it. Mox Emerald, other cards, Thunderous Debut is a favorite pairing of mine to get it on the board. But yeah, the fact that it's a creature makes it easier to get on the board than you think. And then it's just a giant body that if you're, copying it or reinforcing it, it's just going to get big fast. So, fantastic card to pair with planeswalkers like Sarkhan and Broken. That's going to make it, put it on the board with haste and all that. So, it's just a great creature. It's a 15/15 with trample, which just on its own makes it a pretty solid rare. But the fact that we're converting 15 gems to green, don't even worry about the casting cost. Like I said, there are a lot of ways to reduce that. You can discover it, put it in your hand, and it's going to be costing 12 mana for you because of the what Discover does for you. So the fact that it's like temp with Discovery, just about, it's just slightly less conversion than 20. But once you get like beyond 12, when you're talking about gem conversion, it's just all bonus mana at that point. Rarely does it fizzle if you're converting 15 gems to green. You're just almost always going to get a pretty good amount of mana out of that anytime you cast something with that much gem conversion. So the fact that this card is very versatile, it does so much for you, and it's fairly easy to get because it is a rare, so you're gonna maybe be pulling it from packs. You're not gonna have to be spending a lot of jewels to grab it. Makes it such a good card, and once we're able to craft this set, you're gonna be seeing it everywhere because everybody's gonna want to be using it. So that's my list there. Just as a recap here. Started with Nicole Bolas God Pharaoh, the Vanguard, Sunbird Standard. So, yeah, the top five of these would be number one in most sets, but the fact that we get this many chase cards in one set makes it a really good set to me. So, what do you guys think? Do you have anything that you would add, subtract, change the order around for? What's your number one? Is it Galta? Is it Temp with Discovery? Is it something I didn't even include on here? Let me know. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.